Stern has become such a wussified sycophant, he doesn't realize that telling Kamala that he'd vote for a wall is telling her that he knows she's as dumb as one. I mean, not to mention Trump is the wall candidate, not Cackle's McKnee pads. Stern got even more pathetic, wondering how she doesn't nap.
That brings me to Howard Stern and his interview of Kamala Harris, where he put the cards on the table about how he was feeling, in particular about her latest media tour, which did not include Saturday Night Live, but she was lampooned on it a little. A lampoon may be too strong, but she was mocked, as they usually do, just to Republicans. Take a listen.
Greg Gutfeld and Megyn Kelly just tore through Howard Stern's carefully preserved legacy like a wrecking crew with a grudge. With Greg's razor-sharp sarcasm and Megyn's surgical takedown, they exposed the shocking transformation of radio's original rebel into a pampered echo of his former self. From fearless firebrand to celebrity whisperer, Stern's fall from grace wasn't just roasted, it was incinerated. This wasn't commentary. It was a demolition of the myth. And they left no microphone unturned.
This is what keeps me up at night. I don't understand how my fellow Americans, I don't even understand how this election is close. And yes, I'm voting for you, but I would also vote for that wall over there. When you said you don't nap, I get it, because like what you've taken on is extraordinarily difficult. And I mean, do you feel the pressure of the moment in the sense that, like, when I met you out in the hall, I said, I'm really nervous because I want this to go well for you. I want it to go well for the country. Even when I watch them on Saturday Night Live with the, where they have Maya Rudolph playing you, I hate it. I don't want you being made fun of.
Greg Gutfeld stepped into the spotlight with that classic sideways grin. The one that said he had something up his sleeve. And it wasn't just another monologue about politicians or pop culture disasters. No, this time it was Howard Stern, the self-proclaimed king of all media, the shock jock who once made FCC regulators lose sleep and soccer moms sweat through their Aeropostale sweatshirts. Greg didn't so much roast Stern as drag him through a time capsule, pull out the receipts, and hold them up to the fading glow of what used to be rebellion.
Period, while listening to it. You should hear what keeps him up at night.
Greg began by marveling at Howard's transformation from the grungy, raw-mouthed anti-hero of radio to a Botoxed, bathrobe-wrapped version of an NPR host with a side hustle in therapy podcasts. He said, watching Howard Stern now is like finding out your favorite punk rocker just opened a spa in the Hamptons that serves organic tea and lectures on emotional balance. He laughed, saying Howard used to be the guy who mocked everything, politicians, celebrities, political correctness, anything sacred.
She also appeared on Howard Stern, where he said he'd even vote for a wall over Trump. Harris replied, I'm not a wall, but I am plastered.
Now he's sipping green juice while apologizing for the jokes that made his entire career. Greg said Stern didn't just sell out. He sold the booth, the mic, the headphones, and threw in his spine as a bonus. He compared old Stern to a wrecking ball and new Stern to a carefully choreographed interpretive dancer who only swings after checking with legal. Greg couldn't help but chuckle at how Stern now preaches tolerance and growth, yet has an archive filled with material that makes current-day Howard look like he's battling his own ghost in court.
But it is incredibly brave to take this stance after you've made $300, $400 million not being woke, right? Loving Donald Trump, exploiting the mentally ill, wearing blackface. Look at the crop of woke comics, whether it's Stern or Jimmy Kimmel, his BFF, Sarah Silverman, Joy Behar, Michael Ian Black. What do they all have in common? They wore blackface. And then they went woke. It's not a chicken or egg thing there. You know what order it came.
Then Greg dug into the hypocrisy. Howard spent decades branding himself as the voice of truth, unfiltered, unafraid, the outsider. But the minute he got his SiriusXM fortune and a couple of celebrity friends, he became exactly what he used to mock, a pampered elite hiding behind a wall of assistants and curated interviews. Stern went from punk rock to public relations in record time.
Now remember, Stern used to throw bologna slices at strippers' butts. With accuracy, I might add. Now he's worried the possible leader of the free world can't handle his verbal foot rub. I wonder if he used to get this nervous for the strippers before he'd spank them on their bare asses with a dead fish.
Greg mocked how Stern, once allergic to Hollywood phoniness, now hosts A-listers and massages their egos like a red carpet concierge. It's no longer radio. It's a glorified promotional circuit where actors show up to be praised, and Howard nods through it like a therapist trying to keep a 5-star rating. Then came the visual. Greg described Stern's studio like a haunted mansion of relevance. Dim lighting, moody tones, a voice that now sounds less rebellious and more like someone narrating a luxury sedan commercial. He said Howard Stern didn't age. He faded into a wax statue version of himself, carefully preserved by nostalgia and hair dye. Greg leaned into Stern's audience shift, too. He joked that the only thing more shocking than Stern's current content is the fact that anyone who remembers his 1990s self can listen to him now without bursting into flames of secondhand embarrassment. The king of all media now spends more time lamenting social norms than challenging them, and Greg found it both hilarious and tragic. Then he passed the mic, figuratively, to Megyn Kelly, who didn't come in with jokes. She came in with dissection. If Greg was the firecracker, Megyn was the scalpel, and Howard Stern was about to be filleted with calm, calculated precision.
Okay, I hope you had a good week. I did, and no thanks to Howard Stern. True, the New York Post reported that Stern hit a chic restaurant in NYC with a crew of A-listers, including Jimmy Kimmel, Jennifer Aniston, Jon Hamm, Justin Theroux, Jason Bateman. I was not invited. I guess because my first name doesn't begin with the letter J.
Megyn opened by saying Stern's journey from rebel to relic wasn't surprising. It was inevitable, because rebellion without principle always ends in compromise. She said Howard Stern wasn't brave. He was loud. There's a difference. And once the ratings stopped requiring outrage, so did he. She outlined how Stern's evolution wasn't about growth. It was about survival. About keeping his seat at the media elite's table. And in doing so, he turned his back on the very audience that made him a legend. She said the original Stern mocked conformity. The new Stern sells it in podcast form. Megyn didn't pull punches on Stern's attempts at reinvention. She said, the world didn't ask for a sensitive Howard Stern rebranding himself as America's late-in-life therapist. They asked for honesty, for edge, for the unapologetic voice he once claimed to be. But instead, they got Howard whispering about enlightenment between celebrity interviews that feel like group therapy sessions in Beverly Hills. And finally, she took aim at his sudden moral compass. The man who once thrived on chaos now scolds others for being offensive, as if we're all supposed to forget the mountain of shock radio carnage he left behind. Megyn said it wasn't redemption. It was revisionism. And Stern was trying to rewrite his legacy with a highlighter and a Sharpie at the same time.
There's too much at stake. I believe the entire future of this country right now, I mean, as America, land of the free, home of the brave, I think it's literally on the line.
I agree with you.
And when I see them, how did you react to the Saturday Night Live bit?
Here's Stern on anyone daring to poke a little fun at Kamala.
Even when I watch them on Saturday Night Live with the where they have Maya Rudolph playing you, I hate it. I don't want you being made fun of.
Oh my God.
There's too much at stake. I believe the entire future of this country right now, I mean, as America, land of the free, home of the brave, I think it's literally on the line.
So a guy who's supposed to be funny for a living now claims her candidacy is too important to joke about.
Megyn zeroed in on the irony. Howard Stern, who once claimed to fight against censorship, now wields political correctness like a shield. She said, he didn't join the establishment, he got swallowed by it. And the man who once mocked virtue signaling now leads the parade in a virtue-colored sash. She compared the old Stern to a lion and the new Stern to a declawed house cat, purring for approval from the very people who used to call him toxic. He didn't evolve. He retreated, not for wisdom, but for acceptance. Then came the gold. Megyn highlighted the contradiction in Stern's self-portrayal as an outsider while hobnobbing with the elite, living in a mansion, and lecturing average Americans about empathy and social progress. She said, "The guy who once made a living tearing down the walls of political correctness now spends his days building fences around his own privilege and calling it transformation." She laughed at how Stern treats his own past like an ex he doesn't talk about, carefully sidestepping decades of antics as if they're unrelated to the mellowed, Messiah-like version of himself he parades today. But Megyn said there's no separating them. The old Stern built the empire. The new Stern's just leasing the penthouse. And she wasn't finished. She questioned how someone who claimed to speak truth to power now spends most of his airtime agreeing with them. When Stern talks now, it sounds less like rebellion and more like he's auditioning for a guest spot on a CNN panel. He went from firebrand to background noise.
Well, I just saw it, actually, and it was funny. I am a huge fan of Maya Rudolph's. I think she put a lot of time into doing the piece and the character.
Okay, so I do think it's interesting. He's very scared. A lot of I hear this from a lot of my Democrat friends. They're scared of Trump winning again. They're scared of Trump.
Nothing in Stern's previous career that could withstand this modern witch hunt that he now embraces. So this is a form of restitution. Maybe he says, if I'm woke too, the crocodile will eat me last. But they always do eat. But I get it. He flipped from populist to elitist because now he's with elitists. He's living in the Hamptons. What would the Stern of now think of the Stern of before?
Megyn's tone sharpened as she pointed out that Stern's career used to be about making people uncomfortable in a way that sparked dialogue. Now, she said, he's terrified of discomfort, terrified of being labeled, criticized, or even slightly out of step with the new establishment culture he's desperately trying to impress. She ended with the real punch. Stern didn't grow. He shrank. He folded into the comfort of money, praise, and elite approval, all while pretending he's still the same guy with a mic and no filter. But the filter's there now. It's just woven into his contract. Greg returned for one last jab, saying, "Howard Stern is like a comic who lost his punchline but still insists on telling the joke." Every broadcast feels like a desperate attempt to be taken seriously by a world that never needed him to be serious in the first place. He imagined Stern's future show as less a talk show and more of a retirement home radio hour, where guests sit in bathrobes, sip tea, and discuss their feelings while forgetting they used to be entertaining. The revolution Stern once claimed to lead had long passed him by, and all that remained was an echo softly whimpering behind a gold microphone.
Right after the Columbine massacre that the killers should have raped the students before killing them. Not that I like that Stern, but this pendulum swing from saying the most tasteless thing in the universe to putting your balls in a Tic Tac container. You gotta wonder what's going on here. It's striking that the king of the most misogynistic humor ever now turns into a breathless over a progressive, hopelessly shallow candidate.
Megyn agreed, concluding that Howard Stern's tragedy wasn't his evolution. It was that he betrayed his identity for a seat at the table he used to flip over for fun. He didn't become wise, he became quiet. Not for peace, but for permission. And with that, they both left the door wide open. Because in the land of radio legends, relevance has an expiration date, and Howard Stern's might already be past its sell-by sticker. Greg leaned in again, as if he couldn't resist one last lap around the crumbling statue of Howard Stern. He said the most entertaining part of the Stern saga isn't even his fall from grace. It's how completely unaware Stern seems of it. Like he's standing in a soundproof booth of self-delusion, still thinking he's the outsider, the rule breaker, the provocateur, while the rest of the world watches him blend in with the establishment he once torched for fun. Greg painted the picture of Stern as a man who used to run toward controversy like a moth to a flamethrower, now retreating from it like it's a bad Yelp review. He chuckled, saying, "Stern used to broadcast with brass knuckles. Now it's all soft gloves and emotional whispering, the kind of radio that comes with a weighted blanket and a side of chamomile tea. It's not the king of all media anymore. It's the duke of all disclaimers."